Good morning, my fellow human beings. This is the Worldview Bros. If you were wondering if we were alive or not,
We're still here.
we're here. We're still here. We're rolling. Jim and I, busy lives, and just kind of trying to catch a pod every time we can. And
Yep.
Here we are today. If you are listening for the first time, go ahead and check out our old stuff. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Who gets on those two anymore, right? And if you're not, then hey, go to Instagram. We're on Instagram. Check out what we're doing, what we're talking about. I'm Sal, and this is my brother Jim, a.k.a. Jimmy Cocoa Puff, a.k.a. Jimbo Slice, a.k.a. the Adukinator, a.k.a. Bilbo Baggins, a.k.a. Butterbeard. Ooh, that's a I pulled that one out. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. You did forget Pumpkin Spice Jim.
Pumpkin Spice Jim. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. You love the pumpkin spice,
Oh, yeah.
don't
Pumpkin
you?
Spice, all the things, man.
See,
Come on.
I don't know. It's okay. It's a little overrated for me, honestly.
You got to get yourself
Kinda like
PSL.
cranberry.
Get some PSL.
It's the cranberry of spices.
Like cranberry and all the juices.
Yes.
Right.
Pumpkin spices, like in all the drinks, all the milky
Yeah.
drinks. That's just stay
Well, there's
away.
probably a good
Pumpkin
reason.
spice.
There's probably a good reason, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's something like every now and then a pumpkin spice latte is okay, except I'm getting to the point.
I think it's
now,
always okay. So.
I'm getting to the point though, to where I can't drink the really sweet coffees anymore.
Yeah.
This has just happened to me over time with drinks. I loved sweet tea. We're trying out a new thing with the mics, and I could tell right away I was off the mic.
Oh yeah. Were
Did you
you?
hear
You were
that?
just kind of.
I was just kind of back.
It was
yeah,
on. And
right?
oh dang.
Here we are.
That one's
guys,
very
yeah,
sensitive.
right? So I was I loved sweet tea, and I started drinking a lot of sweet tea from McDonald's, and then I realized I was drinking a lot of sweet tea, and so I switched to unsweet tea, and I was on that for a while, and then I was like,
Did you
okay.
do like half and half? Like I mean.
No, it was just I went
just
cold,
okay.
straight to unsweet, and so then I tried to go back to sweet tea because I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready for it. Too sweet, way too sweet. I mean, like I just couldn't do it. Sometimes it happens if I go on a like really large time span
Hiatus.
a hiatus of drinking not as sweet sodas.
Yeah.
So I'll drink diet sodas and then I'll drink sodas, and it's like, oh, that's too too sweet. That one is not as bad, but coffee, it's happening to me. I know I'm taking a long time to talk about this, but coffee, I'm
black
starting.
coffee,
I'm
man.
getting closer and closer to the black, man.
Yeah.
So we're back and already firing interesting topics.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
So, but yeah, I mean, like, when Jim and I started this thing, it was all just about having fun, and we just love talking about the truth and a lot of great stuff, and it's when life hits you and it's busy.
Oh yeah.
There's no time for it. We don't get paid for it or anything. So.
Right.
So we didn't want to really stress ourselves too much, and so I think we kind of have come to almost a close of this first semester of being teachers, and so it's getting closer to just have a little bit more downtime,
Yep.
So,
Yeah. For me, second semester is always a lot. Time opens up a lot more.
yeah.
So, but anyway, so what have you been doing interesting, Sal? In your meager spare time.
I mean, I've been, I knew it wasn't going to take long for me to start talking about the Dallas Mavericks, because that's just, I just love them.
Oh man, they're doing so well.
That's what my spare time has been, honestly,
Uh-huh.
just like following them and being excited about.
You even got me like,
Luka.
I haven't
I know,
been
dude,
watching
I gotta-
basketball games in a while.
Dude, I got
long
excited.
time. A long
like,
time.
I legitimately got excited the two different times. You're like, dude, I was watching. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Come on, Jim.
I know. I've been watching like the last 5 games.
Yeah. Did you watch the Wolves game, the Timberwolves game?
Yeah. Yeah, they
Oh,
came from behind.
That's
And
crazy.
I mean, Luka seemed to be having kind of a bad night, really. But you know what? They put him in the bench.
Man. Dwight Powell
Yeah.
is like 24 points.
Yeah, it's like 7 for 7 field goals at one
Yeah,
point.
he had 11 points in the first quarter. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, we're going to win if,
Yeah.
we're going to win a lot of games if, like, when Luka doesn't do well, the bench, like, steps up. But, I mean, I understand there's a lot of, like, great stuff going on in the league right now. LeBron James kind of showing everybody that he's not washed up. And
Yeah.
he's doing awesome.
No, I know.
You know, the two games that, I guess besides the second one, but the first game, the first Laker-Mavs game was really entertaining. And it's cool to see those guys go back and forth and just see Luka do his thing, especially LeBron being his idol. But, and then James Harden had a 60-point game the other night, and he's doing amazing things. Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing out of his mind as well, too.
Wow.
So there's a lot of cool things, and I understand Luka not being, like, so the MVP talk with Luka, I understand him not being, like, 1 and 2, and I don't expect him to win it. There's obviously there's the Mavs fans who are like, oh, if Luka doesn't win the MVP, then this system is rigged. I'm like, no, dude, he's a second-year player. There's other guys doing awesome things too.
And the season is still pretty early.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say, I think he has a really good chance of winning it. I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavs finish 3rd seed.
Yeah.
And he's doing this the whole season.
Wow.
Like that's unheard of.
Yeah.
But he did get Player of the Month, Western Conference Player of the Month.
Sure, for November, right?
For November,
Yeah.
and he got a Western Conference Player of the Week nod in the same month, obviously.
Wow.
So I don't know. I just think I know that we were texting about it, and I really think for the longest time I did think, okay, the Mavericks need like a third guy, right?
Right.
Because that's just been what we've been told for the last 10 years. That's like the recipe for winning.
Right.
When it had not necessarily always been that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially you think of your Bulls back in the day. I mean, it was always Scotty and Jordan, and then the other guys was just kind of like a revolving door a little bit.
Sure, that's right. Yeah.
And of course, there are like a lot of big threes that won as well. But I think, in other words, there's not one recipe, and I think if Kristaps Porzingis can take it a step higher, and then Rick Carlisle can take care of having a good bench and a good team, dude, like that's what you need, and that's how the Mavs won their last title too.
When they won their title, it was all about that bench.
Yeah,
Man.
it was. I mean, it was a ton of guys who just
Yeah.
worked together and fought for each other.
Yeah.
And
It was
I
cool.
can see. I love seeing with the Mavericks. They have a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And it's really special. It's cool to see, and I think part of it is because like Luka's young, like he's the star, but he's also really young. He's still the young guy.
Yeah.
So it's like the older guys, like obviously they respect that he's going to lead them on the court,
and
right?
On the offense, yeah.
But off the court, it's still like like little brother kind of thing,
wow.
So
Yeah.
I think that dynamic works really well.
Okay.
So Luke is not really getting in his head so much,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it just kind of works out. And
He does seem like a little cocky SOB a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So
he's 20.
I'm just, yeah. And
yeah.
all I mean by that is, I hope the guy kind of keeps his head on straight and has the discipline to, to be consistent. And I don't know, he looks like he could burn himself out. Like he looks like he's putting 100% the whole time. I mean, but anyway.
I also try not to look at the Facebook page of the Dallas Mavericks. It's like the Mavericks Fans for Life page that someone started and everyone's on. Because you got the stupid fans.
MFFL?
Yeah.
Right.
You have the stupid fans who are like, after one loss, you're like, trade him! He's terrible! Trade that guy. He sucks.
Trade who?
Whoever.
Whoever,
right?
yeah.
Dwight Powell's been getting a lot of that. And I'm like,
dude, fandom. Oh
people are just stupid,
Yeah.
And I realize that I think I would consider myself more than a casual fan.
Yeah. No,
you know?
yeah, dude. I mean, you painted yourself blue. I mean, yeah.
and not necessarily just as a Mavericks fan, but as a NBA professional basketball fan.
Yeah.
So like I know a little bit more what's going on, so I understand like, you know, sometimes I get like if I was just kind of like a casual fan, maybe I'd be like, oh, that sucks, you know, they suck after one game, you know, but I kind of know more of the outcome. But
it's like
I feel like
every
you should
sports
still
conversation that you have with anybody.
Yeah. I don't know, and I would think that people would be smarter than that, but maybe
well,
not.
it's I think a lot of people just like venting that way, you know. That's how they blow off some steam. Like,
right.
For instance, making fun of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys and Jason Garrett. I mean, just one more thing on sports with that, like with the Cowboys, right? And the whole thing about Jason Garrett being like this kind of pusillanimous kind of guy. Here's what I mean by that. So I was watching the Alabama-Auburn game. Was that last weekend? And so Auburn beats Alabama, right? And you see the coach for Bama, Saban, right?
Saban. Mm-hmm.
So you see him, like, guy's freaking furious, right? He's, like, yelling at everybody, snapping at everybody. He's pissed off that he's losing this game, you know? Honestly, that's what you want to see.
Right.
When you see Garrett and they're losing, he just puts, like, his sad face on, and then he just starts clapping, like, come on, guys. Come on, guys. Mm-hmm. And he's being ridiculed for that, rightly so. Like, be a freaking man, dude. I mean, like, you need a little bit of testosterone from your coach. I feel like, you know, I think that's important. And so
no, yeah, I agree. I think I've backed him up for as long as I can.
Mm-hmm. Garrett,
yeah. And I think more things are just because I hate to be that fan who's like, I don't like doing that. I don't like being like, oh. Yeah, it's the coach's fault. When honestly, I don't really know. I think people just want to say that because he's been there probably the longest than anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, he's been there the longest, so you should be great, you know? You try coaching the freaking Cowboys.
Well, yeah, but...
It's like, I mean, they're like the most notable team, or they're the ones that have the largest target on their back.
Well, I know, but I mean, but that's the breaks too, man. I mean, like they're showing this thing, like there's 6 coaches who have been coaching the same team for this many years. I don't know if you saw that stat. And out of all 6 of them, 5 of them have won Super Bowl titles in that time frame.
Oh,
and the only one who hasn't, guess who?
Yeah, Jason Garrett. That's a good point.
I mean, look, honestly, you're there for a long time and it's not working. Sorry, I mean that's life. You know, right, you're out on your back and time for some new blood.
Yeah.
So I don't feel sorry for. I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm sure he's made plenty of money and I'm sure he has other options in life. But I think it's time to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think I'm finally starting to join that team.
Yeah. But no, but I grant your point. I mean, what do I know about football? Absolutely nothing. Okay. Yeah. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, and that because also on the Mavericks thing, people started saying, "Oh, we need to fire Rick Carlisle." I'm like, "Oh, shut up. Please don't talk." Like I did comment on somebody saying don't like I didn't. It doesn't matter to me that much. It's just a Facebook page.
Who's Rick
Carlisle? But I was like, I just commented saying, "Don't say stupid things."
Okay.
Okay. I'm like, he's our coach. Like he brought us a title.
Yeah.
You know.
That's different. Yeah.
And he's smart, and he's you know turned mediocre teams into great teams that we've had before. Yeah. You know, and so and basically he started like. He had like 8. We had 8 different starting lineups in the first however many games of the season, and so people were mad about that. I'm like, no, that's him trying to figure out this team and do the best one. Yeah. And now for the last 6 games, we've had the same one. He kind of found something he liked.
Yeah, so. I mean, they're looking pretty good. Who's Rick Carlisle, by the way?
Oh, you mean Jim? Yeah, I meant to say it's Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. Ever since he picked up, coaching, dude, it's been pretty awesome. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Anyway,
So what's new for you, Jim? What's going on? What have you been getting into in your
man.
spare time?
Honestly, I know this just sounds really boring, but I mean, just really focusing on my schoolwork. So this year I've been really enjoying doing physics and history. So I'm doing this every Thursday in my class, and I just decided to kind of dig into the history a little bit and look at like the greatest physicists or the greatest scientists in history. And so I do kind of like a little, well,
Sheldon Cooper.
It's meant to be like a 5-minute little thing, but I think it usually turns into like a 15-minute thing. But again, it's once a week, and look,
15 minutes is nothing.
No, I know. Yeah, I'm a physics teacher, and so we learn a little bit of about physics history, and I don't know. It's been so awesome, like really looking at freaking smart people from the past, just thinking through how it is that you think about the universe, how it is that you study it, and what conclusions you can draw, and like what science even is.
Yeah.
So just a couple interesting things about that. The term science itself is actually kind of like a more modern term. Back in antiquity, the way to think about it is it's what was called natural philosophy. So it's like it kind of all goes back to ancient Greece, like so many things. You have your philosophers, you have Aristotle, Plato, and all these guys. The way they kind of looked at it is philosophy simply means the pursuit of truth, period. So it's like the broadest category. But then there's something that they talked about called natural philosophy. And natural philosophy means figuring out the truth as much as possible about simply how the physical universe works. So it's kind of this smaller kind of a category. And anyway, like it's I don't know, it's brilliant to see some the theories that develop. Like for the longest time, you have the geocentric view of how the solar system works, that the Earth is the center of the solar system. One thing that I found that was pretty interesting about that is that most people think that, of course people thought in the past that the Earth was the center of the universe because we're so self-centered. And but actually, like looking, and I probably thought that too, but delving into it really wasn't that at all. Like some of the ancient people, like Aristarchus, actually considered a heliocentric model. But given what they were able to observe at the time, a heliocentric model simply didn't make sense. Geocentric fit the data way better.
Yeah.
So like one thing that I was able to figure out is that the reason that the heliocentric model didn't make sense to them is that given the motion of the stars, it would only make sense if the background stars, like all the stars of the constellations that you see, a heliocentric model can only possibly work if those background stars are dramatically farther away from the planets that we actually see moving. So the moon, the sun, and Venus, Jupiter, and Mars, and so on.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, that in fact is the case. That that the background stars are dramatically farther away than Venus, Mars, Jupiter, etc. So, but in the heliocentric model, in the geocentric model, it works out. It works out a lot better. So it wasn't a question of self-centeredness or something like that. I mean, I'm sure some people saw it that way at some point. But no, I don't know. It's just kind of fascinating to see that people in the past aren't as dumb as a lot of people think. We have this. It's called the historicism idea. Okay, historicism is the idea that every generation in the future, or every new generation, is like automatically wiser, better, and smarter than the previous generation. Like there's nothing important for us to learn from the past, because guess what? We're in the future, and future automatically means better. Future automatically means wiser, more advanced, more progressive. And it's not the case.
That's actually something that's come up a lot, and that it's come up a lot with me in random conversations,
Mm-hmm.
like applied in different ways. And it's this idea of our people, and I guess like I said, it's come in different times and different conversations with people of different ages. And lots of times, I'll talk to people who, maybe boomers who are like, oh, things weren't like this when I was growing up.
Right,
right. And so then it just got me thinking, as like, well, like, have we just gotten worse? Have people gotten worse, or have people just, or is it, are we just more like, is technology more? Obviously, we've progressed with technology,
Right.
and we know more things. Or, I'm not convinced that people are worse.
Right.
And I don't know if maybe people are better, or maybe it's just we're the same. We've always been the same.
Yeah.
You have good people and you have bad people. Like, that makes more sense to me. I don't know what you think about that, but it just doesn't seem that. I don't buy that people have just gotten worse and worse and worse.
Right.
But maybe it has. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it kind of going back to the historicist idea. Of course, it kind of does make sense in many respects. Of course, there's no denying that there's been all this progress in technology, and that therefore our scientific knowledge has increased. Of course, I'm not denying that. Okay, I'm simply saying that it's not simply a given that you're always going to have progress, and moreover, progress in scientific knowledge doesn't necessarily mean progress in all kinds of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I love the way that Blaise Pascal talks about this. He talks about things that you can know via the spirit of geometry and things that you can know via the spirit of finesse. What he's getting at is kind of an old truth that when it comes to knowledge, some things can be beheld by the physical senses, and some things are able to you're able to behold with like the moral senses, or not with your five senses, but things that are non-physical, so metaphysical realities. Okay, so metaphysical knowledge, moral knowledge, wisdom about how to live with people, political wisdom. Right. Yeah. This is what I'm all about. What is political philosophy? So when it comes to natural philosophy, aka the scientific things, okay, knowledge of the physical laws of nature, that's easy to catalog. That's easy to progress more and more. Okay. But knowledge about how to live with other human beings, wisdom when it comes to figuring out the things that are just and unjust, all of those metaphysical things, those are very easy to lose. It's very easy to become foolish in a certain generation. Yeah. So, no, I totally think that there are generations that are wiser and less wise, and epochs in history where we have, for instance, greater happiness in society, okay, and certain societies where you have less happiness. So when it comes to those things, when it comes to not natural philosophy, but when it comes to philosophy generally and political philosophy, I think that you have way more back and forth. You have high points and you have low points.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's like when the Bible says in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun, kind of this human behavior and how societies can fall into folly or can fall into wisdom and good times. Yeah, I think that happens. And there's probably something to be said that you're going to have grumpy people in every generation that always look at the glass half empty.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't want to be a downer, but I mean, I do think that in our current era, we are experiencing a bit of a crisis in meaning, like we've said before.
Yeah, I agree.
I do think that we're kind of seeing a little bit more unhappiness as a society, and I think that part of the problem is precisely this dichotomy that we're not able to grasp. We have like a schism, if you will, in our physical understanding of things, and our metaphysical understanding of things. I think that right now we're very foolish, we're very ignorant when it comes to the metaphysical aspects of life, because I think that most of us are falling into the folly that all things are only material, and we're trying to find material, physical solutions to problems that are non-physical, that are metaphysical.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we're a foolish generation. I think we're seeing that, and just a general lack of wisdom, knowing how to live well. And it's not surprising the amount of depression and things that we're seeing, and
I think part of it too, like, and the scary part for me is that not only do I, like, we're part of this world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can't even, sometimes it's hard to escape just kind of the culture and what's accepted.
Yep.
And I think it's become a very, not accepted, but a normal thing to just not really have purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and not understand your purpose, like you were saying.
Yeah, like we're drifting.
Yeah, and so, like, even for those who, who don't really fall prey to that,
Mm-hmm.
I still kind of get caught up in that, and I'm talking from experience a little bit. Like, I know recently for me, like, when I get really busy and I'm just doing the same things over and over again, like, I really start to question. I start to question my spirituality. I question a little bit, not so much like my faith, what grounds me, obviously not, but just kind of, I just start to feel like I want people to feel sorry for me, and I just kind of feel kind of like it in like this, like, oh, I'm in a dry spell kind of thing, and that happens to people, but I kind of feel like I let that idea of not really having purpose kind of flood my mind a little bit,
Yeah.
And when it's clear to me, and then it's kind of like I snap out of it.
Yep.
And it's very clear to me that I have so much purpose, just being a son of God in itself, and the responsibilities that I have as a brother, as a son, as a husband, you know what I mean?
No, definitely.
And so it's kind of scary to think that, like, the ideas that are, that define this generation and define culture now, kind of creep into your everyday life. You know?
No, definitely. I mean, no, and I think some of the words that are coming out here are absolutely right. We're trying to find happiness absent duty, absent like a defined purpose in our life. Where we've talked about it before. We're all seeking happiness, but it's so important to realize that when you kind of seek happiness for yourself, just per se, you often don't find it that way. You actually find fulfillment. You find true joy in life when you kind of understand who you are as a human being, what your purpose is, and when you live up to that purpose. Right. This is the ancient idea of what virtue means. Like the word virtue itself is like a triggering word to people so much at this point. Like, what does it even mean? Right.
Yeah.
And so kind of going back to the discussions we've had before, the whole idea of virtue is what are you meant to do? What are you meant to be as a human being? Like we say, the virtue of a pencil is that, that it writes well, it's made of good wood or whatever, the eraser part, does a good job, that's an excellent pencil,
right.
And that's a virtuous pencil, right?
Yeah.
So a virtuous human being means, okay, does this human being understand what he's supposed to do? Like what is the meaning of being a human being? And are you living up to your excellence? Are you living up to your virtue? And when you do that, that's when you find that true happiness, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Or certainly, I don't think we're far removed from finding happiness in that way.
Right. Yeah. And so I think going back to the question of, like, are human beings just getting worse and worse? And I mean, or are they getting better? And I think it sounds to me like it's, just talking through it's a little bit of both. I mean, it just, things have gotten better, things are worse because people are different, right?
Yep.
Generations are different. There's some great things that have happened in this generation. There's some horrible things that have happened in generations past.
Yeah.
Just like there's horrible things that have happened now that didn't happen in other generations, right?
Oh yeah.
So, I think it's just you can't really put a formula really to how people are gonna be.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's actually kind of comforting. It shows you that the material doesn't have that much power,
Right.
even though some people let it have that much power.
Sure.
Some people do get worse because of the material, right?
Yeah.
And they just get worse and they fall into whatever they, whether it's a depression or just are not good people,
Yeah, no, right. I mean, like, nature will reassert itself. So, like, in other words, again, to try to clarify my point, again, the problem is trying to trying to find solutions in the wrong places, right? We're trying to feed the soul with what is only simply meant to kind of feed the the material necessities of a human being.
Yeah.
Or that we're trying to find scientific solutions, right? We're trying to find scientific solutions, meaning things that have to do with chemistry and physics and the motion of objects. We're trying to find scientific solutions to problems that are metaphysical, to problems of meaning, right?
Yeah.
Look, and this goes to a lot of what people like Jordan Peterson, Vervaeke, and some of these other guys are talking about. It is like Peterson in particular is kind of putting his finger on the problem here, is that we fail to understand the importance of the story in our lives, right? Think about how our lives, we always think of our lives as some kind of a story.
Yeah.
It's not that we're all little scientists trying to find the formula for a perfect life.
Right.
It's like, no, we're trying to figure out how our story fits into the greater story of life,
Yeah.
And like finding the beauty of a story or seeing how you interact with a story has nothing to do with your brain chemistry. Okay.
Yeah.
We're just kind of approaching it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And now what certain philosophers will say, and this is actually kind of a Nietzschean idea too. Nietzsche understood this. Nietzsche understood that we can't possibly live without having some kind of a story that explains life, right? Now, he ultimately believed that there is no story that explains life. And so he said that, all that is left is to try to live anyway, knowing that truth, that there is no underlying truth that explains reality. Okay?
Yeah, that's a pretty depressing.
Yeah, and so that's
there.
his idea of the Übermensch. The Übermensch is understanding that there's actually no grounding story to life, and therefore just create your own meaning, right? We've had this discussion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he in his teaching, it's very clear. He's like, well, this is essentially impossible, but I'm going to try anyway.
Yeah.
I think the good insight that he's having, though, is that he's right. Like, no, you actually can't really live a good life if you don't see how your story can sync up to the story of the world. In other words, in what sense does your life have meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what Jordan Peterson talks a lot about. And he kind of says, well, look, you have to don't disregard kind of the traditions of ancient times. If there's certain duties that have been attributed to mankind, there's probably a good reason for it.
Right.
And this is why it's this whole thing about, give yourself certain duties, understand your life as you have certain duties that you need to fulfill, right? And that's going to give your life a certain amount of purpose. It'll give your life some meaning. Mm-hmm. Now, what I would appreciate more from Jordan Peterson is that he would really dig into the truth that's behind it, and so I think I think that we find good answers to this. We find good answers as to what the meaning of life is when we look at the wisdom throughout history. Okay.
Yeah.
If we look at some of the wisest people throughout history, we're going to find some pretty good ideas and pretty good answers to what is the way that a man ought to live, that a woman ought to live, that a society ought to live. Okay. Ideas about what is the just, what is the beautiful. These aren't just completely subjective notions that everybody can simply make up. And that ultimately, when it comes down to it, Sal, that's the fallacy of the modern era, that we've kind of simply assumed that all of these things, because they can't be analyzed with a microscope, because they can't be measured with a meter stick, that these things are what we call subjective things, right? And if it's subjective, then it's up for anybody to decide. So what is beautiful? What does it mean to be virtuous? What does it mean to be moral? Well, the society has said, the scientists have said, all of those are irrelevant questions, because all of those things are things that we simply give meaning to.
Right.
But the problem is that means we're living stories that have no grounding.
Right. Yeah.
And if that's the case, well, like Nietzsche said, it's essentially impossible to live that way unless you're an Ubermensch. So I don't know how many Ubermensch we're going to find out there.
So what you're telling me is that this is the reason why James Harden is never going to win a championship.
Yes, that's
right. Do you get where I'm going with this? Because, this guy, he's going to score 60 points. He's going to average 40 points a game. He's going to do all these things, but when the time comes, when he needs to bring his story, his meaning, and his role into what a team is, how does it fit into the team?
Oh, I see.
It's not going to happen. And it hasn't happened.
No.
You can score all the points you want, get all the records you want.
Yeah.
But unless you become Dirk from 2011, who said, you know what, these guys are my team, and how do I fit into these guys? I'm going to take a pay cut. I'm going to be a part of this. Then what? You win a championship. That's how it happens right there.
No, very good, Sal. You can't do life solo.
No.
You're going to lose. You're just going to lose.
Was that an okay?
No, that was great. That was great. I like it.
No, yeah. I love that. I love talking that way. Having a story and how your story fits into this I guess the larger picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of truth and life and what because I think the first thing that comes to mind when you start talking about that for me is this constant yearning for wanting to always improve and reflect, and I think you're not gonna grow to be wise and to you're not gonna really achieve that goodness and understand what that means, this, having a story that fits into something larger, unless you are not necessarily criticizing yourself, but reflecting on your brokenness, reflecting on what you can do to improve and what you can do to seek truth, and not be so caught up on your truth, and this makes me uncomfortable, so I'm not going to read it. Or I'm not going to talk about it. Right. This doesn't give me pleasure.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I'm just not even going to mess with it. Or this is an inconvenience to me. And it's just interesting. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. It's how can I constantly improve? Because I think when you're really trying to seek those things, it starts to make sense that it's not about you, right? And not necessarily, you do add, there's value that you can add with your story to the bigger picture, right?
Of course.
But when you start thinking that, you're a gift to other people, and, and you start, like you said, creating meaning for yourself, then that's when you kind of run into some problems.
No, there are very simple little things that we can do to kind of improve the quality of our life in terms of joy And one is to not be so self-centered, you know.
Yeah.
And I catch myself doing it all the time. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like for instance, for me, Sal, like I'm always like very jealous of my time, you know. And I start to get grumpy if like, oh, I need to go to this party or whatever, like, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know, I tend to get like, you know, I'll get really this inward focus, and and I realize, you know, I was just kind of seeking, you know, kind of like the selfish person who has a dessert is not going to share with anybody, you know. That kind of thing, like, oh no, I want it all for myself, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I want all my time for myself. And when you realize that actually, if you kind of open up and look at how you can, you know, try to make other people happy, it turns out that that's almost like even from a selfish perspective, that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
when you kind of you know, live for the sake of trying to make other people happy. That's how you ultimately become happier. And again, like the point, like what's kind of tied to that is the whole point that I probably don't have the best answers as to what the meaning of life is. In other words, stop trying for yourself to give meaning to your life. Mm-hmm. And yet that's like we hear it in like in every Disney movie, and like, you know, everything on TV is like, oh, you know, listen to your heart, you know, be true to your heart, and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, actually, I think a better way to look at it is look around you, and look around you, and be amazed by you know, the beautiful things that you see in life, the beautiful things that you see in other people, and try to magnify that. You know, understand that there's
Lake
truth
Louise,
out
man.
there. What, like what?
Lake Louise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. but again, this is again that philosophic pursuit. The philosophic pursuit of ancient times is simply, what is the truth? Is the truth something that I just make up? That's like almost blasphemous, you know. Like and this is also not only, you know, I keep talking about the philosophers. No, this is also the biblical teaching. The fool says in his heart that there is no God. Or the beginning of wisdom is what? The beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. Now, that's a confusing statement, you know. Try to look at it this way. The beginning of wisdom is kind of look around you. You know? Understand that that truth is something very, very true. Truth is something very tangible. It's not tangible with a meter stick and a microscope, okay? But it's tangible with what Pascal talks about, the spirit of finesse. You know, let yourself think about these metaphysical realities, and be open to them. It's a respect that you would have for the universe. This is an idea. Sorry, I'm gonna like I'm being very abstract right now. Yeah. But this is an idea that is useful in every aspect of knowledge, whether it's scientific, whether you're talking about literature. You know, I've been reading a lot of you know, Tolkien's on fairy stories. Mm-hmm. And how you know, the whole point about a good story, the whole point about a good fairy tale, is to re-enchant yourself with the beauties of the world. Yeah. You know, remember we talked about this, like Tolkien talks about how, you know, the reason you would make up a story of like a blue sun instead of a yellow sun, or, you know, like a purple tree instead of a green tree, is to like re-enchant yourself with the world. You know, like you fall in love with this story about you know, something completely different, like a blue sun. So that then you look at your actual world with kind of refreshed eyes, and you fall in love with it again. And you don't, it's, you know, it's not, it's making sure that you don't lose your sense of awe. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. There's a, and this is what humility is about too. Humility is simply living in awe of the beauties around you. You know, again, we have to resist the temptation, because I think it is the flavor of the current age, is to be very self-centered and to be very self-sufficient. You know, to try to find all meaning within you. We're making ourselves miserable with that. We have to just accept the beauty of meaning that is already there. And of course, from our perspective, that's why we are a Christian. Like we know that the meaning of life is already there, and it is something that's outside of us. It is in fact our Creator. It is in fact God is the truth. Is the source of all things, the source of all beauty. And if we already start from the premise that, oh no, I'm going to find this for myself, well, that's precisely like what the Bible talks about. That is pride. Pride is thinking that you are self-sufficient, that you are the source of meaning of things. And
that sounds exhausting.
It is, yeah, exactly.
No, I like that. I like the going back to the making sure that we don't lose that sense of awe.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge contributor to finding purpose and knowing that we have purpose. Through our Creator and through the larger picture, like we've been talking about. And even further, kind of going in, calling it kind of like what Christ talks about, that childlike faith.
Yeah.
And I see the things that Eli gets so excited about, my son. And he and
yeah, right.
and
If we could all be like kids.
Yeah. It's really incredible.
I know.
And it's I've had those moments where I'm like, man, like that is actually really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really beautiful. Like Eli noticed how cool this tree was,
Yeah.
and he pointed it out. He wanted to climb it, and I step back and I look at this tree, and I'm like, that's a beautiful tree. That's awesome that we have that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And that sounds so. I know it sounds so like dumb, but
no, you're describing a part in the Lord of the Rings when Frodo and the Fellowship first go into Lothlorien. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So when they first get into when they first get into Lothlorien, and Frodo is kind of like amazed by the trees. He's like, oh my gosh, like the leaves are a green color that it's just like so green, and he touches the grass and it's like, oh my gosh, this grass is like amazing. And again, it's like Tolkien talks about that re-enchantment, so it's a really cool little episode where he's kind of showing you that this is an enchanting place, and it kind of like renews your love for just something as simple as a beautiful tree.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
man, well, I've really enjoyed just kind of getting back together, Jim. I know. Again, we've a lot of things. Life happens, and a lot of things are going on, but it's always great to just be able to come together and. Luckily, we live pretty close to each other. We can have these great conversations wherever it takes us.
Even on a school night, that's when we're able to get together.
Best,
Yeah. So. Yeah.
But yeah. So if you have any questions, you have any thoughts about anything we talked about today, didn't have to be necessarily what we talked about. If you just have any thoughts or something like that, just go ahead and email us at theworldviewbros@gmail.com. Again, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, and just give us a shout out, whatever you want. Go ahead and listen if you want to listen to this podcast. Go to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and we will share it on all social medias as well. So go ahead, like us, rate us, give us a 5-star rating, and share with your family, your friends. Just happy to be back. Hopefully we can get a little bit more kind of a steady roll. If not, just tune in and we look forward to getting close to that summer, right, Jim?
Oh yeah.
Really take off a little more.
Oh, again. For sure. But you know what? Right now it's time to enjoy some Christmas time and getting into the season a little bit more. And man, looking forward to that.
Sounds great. So. All right, guys. Well, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Worldview Bros, and we'll see you.
See you guys.